Welcome to the training about podcast guesting to build your brand and your influence. My name is Tracy Cook. I'm a podcast launch strategist and I have my own podcast management agency. I'm really excited to present this to you today. With over 300 episodes as a podcast host and with over 200 podcast guest featured appearances, over 3 years, and building 2 successful video podcast channels on YouTube and on Apple, Spotify, and many other directories, I'm really happy to present to you the information that I have accumulated over my time in the podcasting industry, which is ever changing. Now, if you're someone who doesn't want to start your own podcast, but you love speaking, you want to be seen as the go-to expert in your industry or niche, and you've got a message you want to get out to the masses to create movements and impact, and you've found your voice and you're ready to share. Podcast guesting is the number one way to ethically access somebody else's audience who just might be your ideal audience as well. So what are some of the benefits to being a podcast guest? Number one is increased visibility. Podcast guesting allows you to reach a broader audience and gain visibility amongst listeners who may not have otherwise discovered your expertise. And let's think about thought leadership. You want to be top of mind, the go-to person. It positions you as the expert or a thought leader, sharing your experiences, your stories, your messages in your field. And as you share your insights and knowledge with a targeted and engaged audience, they get to know who you are beyond the sale, what you stand for, what you don't stand for, your personality, your sonic brand. Number 3 is content repurposing. Video podcast is powerful. YouTube and Spotify and many other platforms are really embracing and supporting and distributing a lot of video podcast. Now, that doesn't mean that audio just goes by the wayside, but consider this. Google is the most powerful search engine. YouTube is owned by Google, and that is number 2. So you can really leverage a video podcast and repurpose that content on your stories and reels on all your other social media platforms so you can be omnipresent. Podcast appearances provide valuable content that can be repurposed for other marketing efforts. It can be part of your marketing mix just by being a podcast guest. And you can repurpose it onto blogs, social media updates, or email newsletters. You can share snippets. It's also called a grab, a highlight reel, a 15, 30 second or 1 minute story or reel or post just by being a guest on a podcast, obviously with the podcast host permission. Number 4 is networking. It really offers the opportunity to connect with podcast hosts, other guests, and their networks. Our network is our net worth, and it can lead to valuable professional relationships and collaborations. If you're a standout guest, you will be referred to other podcasts by other podcast hosts. And number 5 is lead generation. Podcast listeners often visit guest websites or social media profiles and their platforms, leading to potential lead generation and increased website traffic. Believe me, after I've been a guest on a podcast, I have a look at my analytics. I see my friend requests go up and I see people join my Facebook group, follow and watch my stories. So that's something to keep your eye on to see if it's effective for you to be a podcast guest. Number 6 is improved communication skills. Regular podcast guesting can help you refine your public speaking and communication skills, making you a more effective communicator overall. You're not going to be perfect when you first start out, but you're going to be authentic. And over time, bringing in some public speaking skills, you'll learn some techniques and strategies that you can use on different podcasts and maybe even test them out on different podcasts as well. The more you do, the better you will get. Communication and speaking is the number one skill in the planet that will be able to allow you to step into influence. Number 7 is SEO benefits, search engine optimization. Podcasts typically have associated show notes, even video podcast, and web pages, which can improve your online presence and search engine ranking. So let's say, for example, your host allows you to share your business website link or a funnel link or a lead magnet link. And they share it in their show notes of their podcast, which means when somebody goes to Google and they type in, where do I find, how can I, have you noticed that podcasts are coming up on the top ranks of Google, even if you're not looking for a podcast about that topic? And then you see like a 30-second snippet, a highlight, a grab, and then you click on it and then there's notes. They're the show notes, the description. And that's where you can actually have your backlinks or links, and you can be more searchable by your ideal audience just by being a podcast guest. You can really leverage SEO, which includes keywords. And diversified audience. You can target different podcast audiences to diversify your reach and engage with people interested in various aspects of your expertise. That means that you can create movements, collaborations, and refer to other, like a cross promotion. So you can target different audiences and ethically access them. So if your host has your ideal audience, you go on, you deliver value, they allow you to share your link, you're able to access those audiences and reach and engage with them. Number 9 is authenticity. Podcasts provide a platform for you to share your authentic, beautiful self, allowing listeners to connect with you on a personal level. They will hear it in your tonality. They will hear it in the highs and the lows of your voice. They'll hear when you're excited. They'll hear when you're sad. They'll hear when you have light bulb moments. They'll hear how you interact with other people. They'll get to know who you are beyond the sale. It is a form of sonic branding. They will get to know your voice. They'll get to know if you're Australian, US, UK, Indian, whatever. They'll go, oh, wow. I love the way they talk. I like the expressions they use. I like the opinion they had about X, Y, Z. It is a platform for you to be your own authentic self. And number 10 is educational value. As a guest, you can educate and inform, even entertain your audience, sharing valuable knowledge and insights on specific topics. You may have a selected range of topics that you talk about. When you have a speaker's sheet, You can list on there what your topics of expertise are and talk about them. But it's normally a discussion with a host on what they want you to talk about. And if it's a fit, I mean, if you're not religious or political or into gardening or anything like that, you obviously wouldn't go to a podcast that is going to talk about that unless that's part of building your brand. You still have to stay aligned to your values, your beliefs. It's very important. Number 11 is promotion and exposure. Podcast hosts often promote their episodes on various platforms, providing additional exposure for your brand or message. So if your podcast host is distributing it on all of the audio podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, etc., and they're also distributing that on YouTube, maybe they're repurposing the content that you've been a guest on their social media platforms. So you've got so much more additional exposure. Number 12 is long-lasting content. Podcast episodes remain available online indefinitely. They are evergreen. They are there to stay. You'll always be searchable and providing a lasting resource for potential listeners to discover your insights. Number 13 is market research. Guesting on podcasts can help you better understand your target audience by engaging directly with them and addressing their questions and concerns. It'll help you, what I call, sift and sort. You'll get to know, feel, witness, and experience who exactly your target audience is that resonates with your brand, your message, and your content. And number 14 is boosted credibility. Being featured on reputable podcasts enhances your credibility and authority in your industry. Your network is your net worth. They'll see who you're collaborating with and who your inner circle is and how you deliver value. Number 15 is cost-effective marketing. Compared to other forms of advertising and marketing, podcast guesting can be such a cost-effective way to reach a targeted audience. Some hosts will charge a fee, and that's okay. Others won't, and that's okay. It depends on the positioning and audience of the actual podcast. Now, these benefits really highlight why podcast guesting can be a valuable strategy for personal branding, marketing, and professional development. It's an extension of your brand. It's part of your marketing mix. Number 16 is feedback and insights. You can gain valuable feedback and insights from listeners, helping you refine your message and offerings. Number 17 is personal growth. Engaging in podcast guesting can be personally rewarding and contribute to your personal and professional growth. It is such a great way to really find expertise in your storytelling, your signature story, your core story, your subject matter stories, and also as a speaker. Practice, practice, practice. Now, number 18 is storytelling opportunities. People love a story, but there's a bit of a letdown when someone says, wow, you've got a powerful story. It's only powerful if the audience can see themselves in the story. So there is an art and a skill to storytelling and signature story. So podcasts provide a platform for storytelling, allowing you to share your journey experiences and anecdotes with a captivated audience. As you learn and grow, you will see that it's not just about telling your story, but it's telling your story to evoke emotion, shift, perception, belief, inspiration, motivation, entertainment to your audience, your captivated audience, and showing them how you actually overcome something, how you witness something, how you learnt something, and passing that on to them in storytelling as a podcast guest so they can see themselves in your story. If you're not making it about your audience, you're only feeding your ego. So you need to make it about the audience so they can place themselves in your story. Number 19 is global reach. Podcasts have a global reach, enabling you to connect with listeners all around the world, potentially expanding your customer base and your network. And number 20, it is fun and enjoyment. If we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong. Many people find podcast guesting to be enjoyable and a fulfilling experience. At times, exciting and nerve-wracking. And it allows them to share their passion and their knowledge with a receptive audience. So have fun with it. I'm going to share now 5 effective ways to get booked on a podcast. Number 1 is create a strong online presence. When you are going to be applying to guests to be on their podcast, they're going to go check out your socials and see what you're all about first to pre-qualify if you're going to be a fit for their audience, because not all guests are a fit, and that's okay. So you want to be able to develop and maintain an active and engaging online presence through your website, through your social media profiles, share valuable content related to your expertise. So it is a no-brainer when they do a couple of scrolls what you're all about, what your brand represents, your values, your beliefs. It's no point one post about gardening, another post about religion, another post about your dog. Yeah, that's great. But as a podcast host, we want to go and see exactly what you're all about, see if you're consistent, see if you're growing your audience, see if people interact in the comments and things like that with your content. This is how you can provide value to your podcast host. And showcase your expertise by writing blog posts, creating videos, or recording your own podcast episodes, maybe later on down the track. And this demonstrates your knowledge and makes you more appealing to podcast hosts. Wow, I see that they do live videos. Wow, I see that they're consistent. Oh, wow, I see that they stand for this. Wow, I see that they are a florist. What beautiful arrangements they make, for example. They want to see you, your brand, your personality. And pitch yourself effectively. Craft a compelling pitch email that highlights your expertise, the value you can provide to the podcast audience, and your previous podcast guesting experience, if any. Personalize your pitch for each podcast, showing that you've done your research and understand the show's themes and audience. I have a podcast pitch template to be a guest that I'm going to share with you as well. And utilize podcast guesting directories and platforms. So join podcast directories and platforms like Podchaser, Matchmaker.fm, or Podcast Guest to connect with podcast hosts actively seeking guests. Some of them are paid, some of them not paid. These platforms often allow you to create a profile, specify your expertise, and reach out to hosts or accept invitations. And this is a two-way street. Screen your hosts as well. Go and listen to a few of their podcasts. See if it's a real fit. Don't just jump on any old podcast, even if you need the experience. You want it to be a fit. Because if it's not, when people go searching for you and you've been a guest on XYZ podcast and you come up in the feed and they're going to go, why was that person on that podcast? It seems odd that they're on that kind of podcast. You don't want to put any doubts in your audience's mind when they actually find you online. So start out as you intend to carry on. You can pre-qualify your podcast host as well and ask them questions. Who is your audience? How often do you upload an episode? Is it weekly, monthly? What's the depth of your audience? How many downloads do you normally get? Are you a video podcast as well? And I would highly recommend to choose video podcast over anything. Network within the podcasting community. Attend podcasting events, conferences, webinars to network with podcast hosts and industry professionals where you can. There are a lot of Facebook groups, podcast guest collaboration, be a guest, find a guest. So have a search for those. It's great to hang out in those groups and social listen, see what they're talking about, and engage with podcasters on social media. Participate in relevant forums or groups, Reddit, Quora, and build relationships within the podcasting community. And my final effective way is leverage your existing network. Reach out to your existing network, including colleagues, clients, and industry contacts, and ask them if they know of any podcasts looking for guests. It's all about communication in podcasting. So personal recommendations and referrals can be highly effective in securing podcast guesting opportunities. So this is a lot of information. How can being a guest build my brand is the next question you're probably asking yourself. Probably feeling a bit nervous or excited. It's a lot of information. So let's go through it together. Establishing authority and expertise. This is how you build your brand. So when you appear as a guest on podcast relevant to your field or expertise, you have the opportunity to share your knowledge, insights, and experiences with a targeted audience. And if you're consistently providing valuable information and demonstrating your expertise, it can so position you as a thought leader or authority in your niche, the go-to person, the top of mind person. Listeners are more likely to know, like, and trust and respect individuals who are featured as knowledgeable guests on reputable podcasts, and it enhances your brand's reputation. Increasing visibility and reach. Podcasts have a broad and often global audience, allowing you to reach a wider demographic than you might with other forms of content or marketing. Your podcast appearances can introduce you to new audiences and potential customers and clients who may not have come across your brand otherwise. And as episodes remain online, evergreen forever, they continue to generate exposure and traffic long after your appearance, contributing to the sustained growth of your brand. You're always going to be searchable. Even if that podcast eventually becomes inactive, you will still be searchable because it's still going to be there. It's not going to disappear after 24 hours. And you can build authentic connections. Again, your network is your net worth. Podcasts offer a unique platform to connect with your audience on a personal level. Sharing your stories, insights, and even your personality can help you build authentic and meaningful connections. Listeners often appreciate the genuine and unscripted nature of podcast conversations, allowing you to showcase your authenticity and your relatability. How you talk on a podcast naturally should be the same way that if somebody was to come up to you at an event, so you're building on the know, like, and trust factor. Now, these connections can translate into loyal, engaged followers, customers, or clients who are more likely to engage with your brand and advocate for it within their networks. By leveraging podcast guesting effectively, you can enhance your brand's credibility, expand its reach, and foster genuine connections with your target audience, ultimately helping you achieve your branding goals. Now, podcast guesting is crucial for building influence in your niche and establishing yourself as the go-to person for expertise. Here are my top 3 benefits. Expertise and authority building. I can't stress this enough. By appearing as a guest on podcasts within your niche, you have the opportunity to share your knowledge, insights, and experiences with a dedicated and engaged audience. We're recapping here. Podcast listeners often perceive guests as experts and authorities in their respective fields, particularly when they consistently provide value and informative content. And being seen as an expert enhances your influence, as people are more likely to trust and follow those that they consider to be knowledgeable and credible. And you can even keep all of your podcast guest appearances in your own Spotify playlist and have it on your speaker sheet or your website as seen on. It positions you as an authority. You've got increased visibility and recognition. So podcast guesting allows you to reach a broader and often global audience, increasing visibility within your niche and beyond. And when you consistently, right, provide value, try to be a guest at least once a month. When you're providing value and information on podcasts, you become more recognizable, and your name and your expertise becomes associated with your niche. Now, this heightened recognition can make you the go-to person for industry-related questions, interviews, collaborations, opportunities, and it further solidifies your influence. There's also networking and collaborative opportunities. They may not be a client or a customer, but they may refer people to you. They may become one of your affiliates. You may appear in virtual summits or on physical stages with them, or they may introduce you to people so you can build out your circle of influence. And as you build relationships with the podcasting community, podcast hosts, and your niche, you will be invited to participate in panel discussions, conferences, webinars, and other events. Collaborations and partnerships can help you expand your influence by reaching a broader audience and associating yourself with other respected figures in your field. Podcast guesting is really essential for building influence because it helps you establish that expertise and that authority. It so increases your visibility and recognition, and it opens doors to valuable networking and collaborative opportunities. And over time, these benefits can really position you as the go-to person in your niche and enhance your influence in your industry or your area of expertise. So you've been a guest on a podcast, you've had a great experience, and the podcast host loved the value that you bring to their audience, and you created another relationship, another connection. Great. Where do we go from here? There is an expectation from a podcast host, whether that's talked about pre-show or whether you've read it in the information booklet that they gave you, or pre-show chat, they set the expectation, they set the framework of you being able to share the podcast episode on your socials. So you want to be able to do that, because I don't know how many times I've had guests on my podcast and I've put the time, the effort, I've done the editing, I've created a social media graphics pack for them so it's easy to share, and they don't even share it. So my question is then, did they not like being a guest? Do they not think that it was valuable? Do they not think that their audience would like hearing what they had to say? And I'm always intrigued as a podcast host why they don't share the episode. So if you got value from being a guest, then this is a mutual value exchange. You share it on your socials. And I've got 7 best ways to promote your podcast interview as a guest. Number 1 is promote your podcast on your social media, whether it's once or twice or once a month for 3 months. And you want to be able to edify your podcast host and share the link to the audio or video episode, or at least a snippet of it. Send a specific email campaign to your email list, as seen on, and add it to your email signature. This is something that is really underutilized, and it is a prime piece of marketing real estate. Your email signature should be a call to action. And if you can add to your email signature, say you've got a highlighted text, new podcast, and you share a link to it. It could be a shortened link, a bit.ly link, a video link, and change it every time you are a guest. This will give your email audience a chance to go, oh, I didn't see that they're actually a guest on people's podcasts as well. It is the most underutilized bit of marketing real estate within your email signature. And create sound bites from the show's content. There is an app called Headliner with your podcast host permission. If they don't share that in a media or graphics package that's shareable on your social media, I do it for my guests. Not a lot of hosts do that. So I don't want to, set the expectation you're going to get that. But you can go to an app called Headliner, and you can type in the podcast name and you can create audiograms and with graphics, which is a static image with a sound bar going through it from that. Or ask your host, which is even better, to ask for a 30-second clip that you can share on your social media. So you can also transcribe the interview and create a blog post with the podcast host permission. Ask them, do you have the transcription that I can share on a blog? Or do you want to, if you have a blog, another marketing way that you can do that to show your network is ask the host to be a guest blog writer on your blog, and they get the transcription from the podcast and they can put that as a guest writer on your blog. Lots of different marketing ways around that. And deploy the interview as a resource in your sales process, as seen on, featured on, and give other companies and contacts a shout out in your interview. Now, if you're mentioning companies or other people, always get permission from your podcast host first. Okay, you don't want to ruin that relationship. You always want to get permission first. I hope that was really beneficial, gave you some insights, gave you some information about the power of podcast guesting and how you can use it to increase your influence and your personal brand. My name's Tracy Cook. I'm from the Podcast Empire, where we're helping purpose-driven women in business to launch a profitable video podcast and amplify their messages of impact. Thank you for listening.